Stories from Eastern States. Interviews with authors and illustrators of great reads, selected by the New Jersey, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, Pennsylvania, and New York Centers for the Book. From the Massachusetts and Rhode Island Centers for the Book, Wherever I Go, authored by Mary Wagley Kopp, illustrated by Munir D. Muhammad. From the New York Center for the Book, Children of the Longhouse, by Joseph Bruchac. From the New Jersey Center for the Book, The Singer and the Scientist, by Lisa Rose. From the Pennsylvania Center for the Book, Night Creatures, Animals That Swoop, Crawl, and Creep While You Sleep, by Rebecca E. Hirsch.
Hello, I'm Rocco Stano. I'm the director of the Empire Center for the Book. We are the New York affiliate of the Center for the Book at the Library of Congress. The Library of Congress Center for the Book's mission is to promote books, reading, libraries, and literacy, and with special emphasis on promoting the unique literary heritage of each state and territory. The authors and illustrators in this program are from Eastern states in the Eastern region. Their books were selected by their state Center for the Book to represent their state's literary heritage. These great reads from great places are chosen every year by each state and territory. In fact, you can see the entire list from this year and previous years at www.read.gov/great-reads. I know you'll enjoy this presentation and will consider listening to all the authors in the Great Read videos. Together, they are a testament to the richness and diversity of this nation's literary creativity. We're going to start with the great state of New Jersey, and the book representing that state is The Singer and the Scientist by Lisa Rose. And she is going to tell us about the book. Welcome, Lisa.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. The Singer and the Scientist is about the night that Marian Anderson was singing at Princeton, New Jersey. And in the audience was none other than Albert Einstein, who loved music, and that's why he was there. Well, Marian Anderson was tired after the show, and she wanted a room to stay at. Unfortunately, the Nassau Inn, which was closest to the performance, would not have her stay the night because she was African American. Well, Albert Einstein overheard this conversation and insisted that she stay with him. And they found out that they have not only music in common, but many other things. And it started a beautiful friendship that lasted many, many years.
Very interesting. And it's probably a story many people don't know. And I can't wait to read that book. And I understand why New Jersey, because it takes place in Princeton, New Jersey. Yeah, the National Book Festival's theme this year is Books Bring Us Together. What does that theme mean to you?
That theme means that books show us what we have in common, that we can feel very similar about things that could be seemingly different. And one of the things that attracted me to this story, I called that golden nugget in history that I found that wasn't well known, was that I'm a teacher, and I always teach pretty much predominantly in African American schools. And I always thought that our communities, the Black and the Jewish communities, had so much more in common than we did apart. And together we can be stronger. And I felt that we really needed to have a book like this.
Yes, well, that's Very good. And it is an important story, to tell people. What do you hope that readers will come away after reading your book?
I wanted them to learn something that was little known in history. And I also wanted them to realize that, working together, that you can do anything, and that our communities can work together to accomplish great things.
Well, thank you for being with us. And I'm sure everyone, even if you're not in New Jersey, wants to pick up a copy of The Singer and the Scientist. Thanks again for being with us. And next, it's kind of unusual. We have the same book representing two states. They're the states of Massachusetts and Rhode Island. And because it's the same book, but two states, we have two people with us today. And the book is Wherever I Go. And we have with us the Emmy Award winning author, Mary Wagley Kopp, who's the author of the book. And she's representing Massachusetts. And Munir Mohammed, the illustrator of the book, representing Rhode Island. So, Mary, can you tell us about the book?
Hi, thanks for having us. Yes, I can. Here it is, beautifully illustrated. Yeah, so Wherever I Go is written by me and illustrated by Munir Mohammed, who you will meet. It's published by Athenaeum Books for Young Readers, which is an imprint of Simon & Schuster. Wherever I Go is a fictional story of a young girl, Abia, who has lived most of her life, her 7 years, 4 months, and 16 days in the Shemelba refugee camp. She has a lot to do during the day. She pumps water for her family. She waits in long lines for rations. She pounds cassava root for their next meal. She watches her baby cousin while her mother and aunt collect firewood. The typical chores in a refugee camp. And they're basically activities that support what is a difficult daily existence. But as children naturally do, Abia finds a very creative way to cope with her days, and she makes herself a queen. She is Queen Abia. And this queenness not only transforms her days, but it also, we hope, softens the reader's journey as they get a glimpse of life in a refugee camp and the challenges. And what is also shared in this story is Abia's mother's reflection of the importance of their particular story, of fleeing, of leaving everything and everyone behind, their harrowing journey to find refuge, and then how, as they're eventually resettled, that their stories stay with them and sustain them, including Abia being a queen. There's back matter with a bit more information and some resources for people whose curiosity is piqued and want to know more.
Yes. So Mary, what was your inspiration for writing this story?
Yeah. Well, I was with a small team of filmmakers, and we were actually in the Shemelba refugee camp. This was a documentary about refugee resettlement, and we followed a family from Shemelba to Providence, Rhode Island. They were resettling in Providence. And I've got to say, in the camp, probably the most unexpected happening were my interactions with the children. You might think they would be unhappy and, in the worst of circumstances, they weren't. They were like normal children, curious, full of joy, playfulness. They wanted to know everything we were doing and where we were going. And that just stayed with me. Their delight and their joy stayed with me. And once I finished in the documentary world, I think it had planted a seed that stayed. And when I had a little more space in my life, I decided to create a children's book.
Terrific. Munir, let's meet Munir, the illustrator. Yes, welcome. And I want to know, what was the inspiration behind the illustrations that you created for this book?
I would say, I mean, I'm from Africa, and the story comes from Africa. And after reading the story, wherever I go, it brought me back to my childhood, growing up in Africa, especially in Ghana. I know the landscape very well. So I could draw inspiration from my background, history, geography of the land and the people. I walked barefooted to school, at home. It doesn't matter where I was going. I walked barefooted, just like what Mary wrote. I wore the similar clothes. I didn't have to make up any part of the story when I was illustrating because I lived it. So my inspiration came from my background, and seeing what Mary wrote was as if she was writing part of my life. And that made it, I wouldn't say it was easy to make, but at least it was easy coming from Africa to know what I was supposed to do. So that's where I got my inspiration from, my background, my history, geography, and also my people and the land.
Yes, now while you're here, I have a question that's not on the list. So how did you, and you currently live in Rhode Island, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
How did you end up being a resident of Rhode Island?
Yeah, to tell you the truth, I didn't start being an illustrator. I am a painter.
Mm-hmm.
From portraits to landscape to whatever. I've painted about 10 West African presidents' official portraits. But there was a time when I thought that I was so tired and I felt like I want to do something like illustration. So, but that didn't bring me to the USA. It was someone who brought my work to Howard University. Then I received a letter and said, will you come to Howard? I ended up not going to Howard, but I went to Roland RISD, which is, as you know. So that's how it all started, how I came to stay here in Rhode Island. But in Rhode Island, I did a lot of murals, larger than life sizes. So this is just my second journey. My artistic background.
Yeah. There's a quote in the book that says, "Mama says we'll have our stories, though, whenever we are," let me say that again. "Mama says we'll have our stories, though, wherever we go." Why is this important that stories travel? Mary, why is it important that stories travel?
Yeah, well, I think as storytellers, we all know that stories are extraordinarily powerful, and they come in so many forms. You know, they can entertain us and teach us, and they can inspire us. I think, I don't want to speak for Munir, but we've mentioned this to each other before, that this particular story, we hope, piques children's readers, adults, everybody's curiosity. Who is the child sitting next to you in school? What is their story? Who's that person in your neighborhood that just moved in? What is their story? And to really inquire into each other's lives, our backgrounds, what we hold important, and ultimately what we have in common, what we share. And I think that's an underlying theme of most great books, and I hope Wherever I Go is one of them. And that is, we have a lot of similarities. We have a lot of the same fears, a lot of the same dreams, a lot of the same hopes for our future. And I think Abia's story is important to share.
And back to Munir, how did you make your illustrations travel?
I would say, as an illustrator, the job is to, let me say, have the same passion as the author in order to do a good job. An illustrator, you are introducing the story of the author to the reader visually. By doing so, the reader becomes part of the story, the character. or characters in the book. And for that, is able to travel with them this incredible journey. So that's where I feel like it's not you, the illustrator, that's going to make the book travel 100%. It has to do with the author, because what she wrote is what you are trying to portray visually. And to combine the two together, it becomes a vehicle for everyone to be part of, like a bandwagon. Let's travel together and see where these people are going and where they come from. That's why books can travel.
Thank you both for joining us today. And now we're going to travel from New England. We're going to travel west to the great state of Pennsylvania, and we're going to meet Rebecca Hirsch, the author of over 70 books, that many of them dealing with science and geography. And she, and the book that is representing Pennsylvania is Night Creatures, Animals That Swoop, Crawl, and Creep While You Sleep. Well, welcome, Rebecca. Tell us about some of these creatures, or what we will expect to find when we're reading that book.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. The book is Night Creatures. It takes place during one night as a child and a parent spend the night camping in their rural backyard. It's the kind of experience that would be exciting for any young child, the chance to stay up late, watch the stars come out, roast marshmallows, and sleep in a tent. But as the family is having their own adventure, all sorts of animals are waking up in the darkness around them. So fireflies are flickering, bats are flapping, a great horned owl is hunting. And so this whole drama with these nocturnal animals is unfolding as the family is having their own fun. And there's back matter with more information about these animals. One reader called it the perfect book to read with a child in a tent, and I just love that. The book is published by Millbrook Press, and it is illustrated by Sonia Posentini, brought the nocturnal world to life with her magical illustrations.
Well, thank you. And you've written so many science-related titles for young people. How do you keep finding interesting, relevant science and nature topics?
Well, I'm really fortunate because science and nature is a really vast and interesting area. So I don't think I could possibly run out of things to write about in my lifetime, because there's so many fascinating stories in nature and so many wonderful experiences. And scientists are always making new discoveries, and they're always pushing the boundaries of what is knowable. So, for instance, scientists are inventing these tracking devices so they can put, a tracking device on an animal and follow along to find out where the animal goes and what it does. And those tracking devices keep getting smaller and smaller, so we can follow more animals and learn more. So there are always new stories coming out. But you don't need fancy equipment to find fascinating things in science and nature. There are fascinating things happening in our own backyards, like the animals I wrote about in Night Creatures. I think the challenge with writing about science and nature for kids is finding new stories that haven't been told, and there are quite a few of them out there, and also finding maybe stories that have been told, but finding new ways to put a personal spin on them or a fresh take on them and make them interesting and exciting to young readers. I think backyard animals are a really good opportunity for that, because these are the types of creatures that kids might see or hear in their own neighborhoods. So it's a great entry point for getting kids excited about the world of nature.
Well, I'm not sure if you want to answer this next question, because I'm going to ask you, what's your all-time favorite hiking trail or nature area? You may not want to answer it because then everybody will know about it and it will get crowded. And, you're going to say, oh, it used to be so peaceful. But please give us a hint
Okay.
of your favorite.
All right. Well, okay. So first of all, I don't think it's possible to have just one favorite. Pennsylvania has so many wonderful natural areas and hiking trails. And I will just give a shout out to our state park system because it is world-class and absolutely free to the public. But so I will just name one of my favorite places right now. And it is in central Pennsylvania where I live, which is in the mountains. So you really have to want to come here. It's not easy to get to, but it's totally worth it. And it is a place that I have been visiting a lot in the last couple of years, and I absolutely love it. It's called Stone Valley Experimental Forest. And there's an environmental center with it called Shavers Creek Environmental Center. And they are both owned by and managed by Penn State University. And I'm fortunate because it's just a short drive over the mountain from my house. It has so much packed into one small area. It has mountains and forests and trails, picnic areas, streams you can play in, a lake for boating, and so much wildlife. And it is free and open to the public. And that place actually had a role to play in my book because Shavers Creek Environmental Center offers a nature camp for children. And my children attended this camp. It's a week-long day camp, but you have the option to spend the night on the last night. Campers who want to spend the night, their parent comes, the family puts up a tent on the lawn of the nature center, and you can sleep out. And they have coffee and pancakes in the morning. It's wonderful. And part of that last night is that the camp counselors lead night walks into the forest and teach everyone about nocturnal animals. And it's really magical to go into a forest at night with no flashlights, and a little scary, but as long as you're careful, you can do it safely. And it was during a night walk at that camp that I got the idea to write a book about all the animals that wake up when we would normally be going to sleep. So I'll name Stone Valley as one of my favorite places. Come on out. We would love to have you.
Well, Rebecca, thank you for telling us about the book and also about your favorite place to go hiking in Pennsylvania. And now we're going to move on to my favorite state, which is New York, because I am the director of the Empire State Center for the Book, as I mentioned earlier. And one of the things that New York likes to do in selecting our great reads is to look back on so many books that have been written by New York authors or are based in New York. And I am delighted that we have selected, yes, Children of the Longhouse, and was written by Joseph Bruchac, published by Penguin Random House. And I am delighted that Joseph is joining us because for over 40 years, you've been creating literature that reflects the indigenous heritage and traditions. So thank you again, Joseph, for being here, and tell us about Children of the Longhouse.
Sego, peace, my friends. Good to see you all. Children of the Longhouse actually is a book that I wrote 26 years ago, but I still feel it's timely to this day. It takes place in pre-Columbian America in a Haudenosaunee and Iroquois village along the Mohawk River, which is actually the site of a contemporary Iroquois community called Ganancha-Holegay. And in the story, a boy named Oguajo, which means bear, and his sister, Ojidja, which basically means flowers, discover the importance of storytelling and also of peace, because my main character finds himself in big trouble with a group of older boys who are trying to plan a raid on another nearby village. He manages to tell the elders about it. It gets stopped, but now he's in big trouble. And he finds himself as part of a game of triathlon, or lacrosse, which was played, an original Native American game, not just as a sport, but as a prayer for the health of someone who was ill. And during that game, he comes to a resolution with the boys who had seemed to be his enemies. So in many ways, it's a book about Native people on their own terms, and also about the importance of peace, and even further, the lessons that stories can teach us. There's many stories woven into the fabric of the book, told to my main two characters.
Yes, well, thank you for that description. And as you said, the book was written several years ago. And one of the things that many people may not know is that you were at the very first National Book Festival, weren't you?
Yes, I was. I was honored to be there, along with some friends of mine who were Navajo Code Talkers, and a novel of mine called Code Talker, which was written with their help, was recently chosen by Time as one of the 100 best young adult books of all time. So thanks to the National Book Award for enabling me to spend even more time with those friends of mine who helped me with that book.
Right. Yes.
Yeah,
We mentioned that, The Children of the Longhouse was written in 1996. Have you seen the depiction of Native Americans and Native American characters evolve over the years?
I have, and it's largely because the Native authors themselves, women and men who know their own cultures, are telling their stories. I mean, imagine if every book by a Jewish American writer was written by someone who has no connection to Judaism. And that was often the case with the works that were being done about Native people. There was a lot of inadvertent, admittedly, stereotyping and inaccuracy. And I have long been a belief that people need to be able to write freely about what they know from their own cultures, and not just to draw from someone else's. Although you can do it if you know well what you're doing, but often people didn't. So today, there is a whole cadre of talented, wonderful, indigenous Native writers who are producing books and stories and poems, more than I can name, although I do know most of them, and it's a very exciting thing to see.
Do you have any favorite children's books with Native American characters or themes?
Yeah, let me just mention a very dear friend of mine, Louise Erdrich, who has written a series of books called The Birch Bark House. And in those 5 books, she depicts life in an Ojibwe or Anishinaabe village around the Great Lakes at the time of the coming of Europeans. Wonderfully written, full of humor, full of cultural accuracy, and extremely well written. But I also should say that there's a whole new generation of Native authors. A good friend of mine named Cynthia Leidich Smith, who does a Sensations, a blog, is now the editor of an entire division of HarperCollins called Heart Drum Books, which publishes only Indigenous writers. She herself is a writer. I think of someone like Tracy Sorrell, a new Cherokee or Aniondwia, a writer who has begun to produce book after book, or my dear friend Eric Gansworth, who is a Tuscarora writer, who has written several novels for younger people. So, and those are just, a few of the dozens and dozens of wonderful writers I could mention.
Well, we have all these writers, but you haven't stopped writing.
No.
So I want you to tell us about your latest book.
Well, I'm going to cheat and tell you about 2 because they came out at the same time. Res Dogs is a little novel written in verse, written every morning while I was walking my dog and dictated into my phone. And it talks about a girl during the pandemic who finds herself stuck on their reservation, unable to go home to her parents who live elsewhere, and a dog comes and adopts them. That was chosen by NPR as one of the best books of 2021. And then this book here, called A Peacemaker for Warring Nations, illustrated by David Kanita Fadden, a Mohawk illustrator, and it tells the story of the founding of the Haudenosaunee or Iroquois League of Peace 1,000 or so years ago, when those 5 nations were at war, and it seemed that there was no way out, and the Creator sent a messenger of peace. I feel like both of these books are very timely in different ways, and that we can never have too many stories that talk about the importance of peace.
Joseph, your publisher or publishers would be annoyed with me for not asking who published each of those books.
Wisdom Tales Press published this one, and my friends at Dial Books published Res Dogs.
Okay, well, we have three three publishers represented in this little segment here today. So I am delighted that we remind me, where are you based? I mean, I have an idea where you're based in New York. I know it's not New York City. Where exactly in New York State do you live?
Well, right now we're in the house I was raised in by my grandparents in the town of Greenfield Center, New York, in the Adirondack foothills north of Saratoga Springs, where we have an outdoor education center and teach traditional skills and the indigenous languages of our area.
Yeah, and I would be remiss not to encourage people from all over the country to visit the Saratoga area and that part of upstate New York, because people tend to say, oh, New York is New York City, but we all know it doesn't stop in New York City. There's a whole state there. Yes. Well, I want to thank all our creators here today, and I want to encourage everyone, if you enjoy this little chat with some of the creators, that you check out the others that are all listed on the Library of Congress website. There are, and you get to meet so many authors and illustrators, and also learn about so many different states. So again, thank you all for being here, and congratulations that your book has been selected by a state to represent their state. Thank you.
Learn more about the books, authors, and illustrators. Find Pennsylvania author of Night Creatures Rebecca E. Hirsch at RebeccaHirsch.com. Find New York author of Children of the Longhouse Joseph Bruchac at JosephBruchac.com. Find New Jersey author of The Singer and the Scientist Lisa Rose at LisaRoseWrites.com. Find Massachusetts author of Wherever I Go Mary Wagley Kopp at MaryWagleyKopp.com. And find Rhode Island illustrator Munir D. Muhammad at MunirStudio.com. See all that these state centers for the book have to offer. Find Massachusetts at massbook.org. Find Rhode Island at ribook.org. Find New York Empire State at nyla.org. Find New Jersey at njcenterforthebook.org. And find Pennsylvania at pabook.libraries.psu.edu.